News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Thursday. We're going to talk some politics this morning, world politics, international politics, and as it ties in with us specifically, we might start off with what's going on with North Korea and our president and what the plans are. We can also talk along those lines about some other developments more domestically in life. We'll open up the phone lines. It's just kind of a chance to throw it against the wall, see what sticks, and talk. And 737-7587 is always the number, but you see on the screen there, national and international politics. Professor Marc Schwerdt is with us from Lipscomb University. It's nice to see you again, Professor. It's been a while, and you do political science as your umbrella, but as he likes to say, there are a great number of things he could talk to us about, and I appreciate you coming on.
I hope so.
You know, I guess a lot of folks observing and seeing every new development with regard to really what will be one of the first times ever, you know, a president of this country meeting with North Korean leader. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is, in my memory, this may be the first.
I think
you're right. It wasn't something that was pursued, at least in any sort of consistent way, by some of the other administrations that we've seen. Now, he has met with a former president, you know, with President Carter back during the 90s. And
that was his father, right?
That was Kim.
This is Kim Jong-un.
Yeah,
and so, but yeah, you're right. And he's this is okay. So yeah, so there was that.
This is his first meeting with an American president. This is his probably second or third meeting with another head of state.
Okay, so one of the others. Okay, another
Kim Jong-un has met with the leaders of China.
Okay,
which will be a precondition to how this negotiation will go, because China's so involved with North Korea. And then coming up the next week or two, or what we have actually had, he's met with the president of South Korea. Because, you know, that's really your beginning point.
That was a big deal when you took the train there.
The state of war between South Korea and North Korea. And once you've got, you know, we're still in a state of war. I mean, that's one of the touching stones of this. Once you've got that settled, then we get to the next part. Okay, how far does this go? Does this denuclearize North Korea? What does that mean? Is it about just weapons? Is it about research? Is it about energy production? You know, how far does that go? Because my guess is, you know, North Korea would like to hold on to some measure of ability to research nuclear if they can get away with it. And that's one of the things that Trump is really going to probably push on, that we need a guarantee there will be no more possibility of renuclearizing a Korean peninsula, because, you know, what you want is a peninsula that is no longer a touch point for a possible escalation to nuclear war.
But isn't it true, wouldn't you say, the only reason we even pay attention to North Korea is because of their nuclear weapons?
Oh, certainly. And that's why they developed it.
Right. And so that's why no matter what our president does when he goes over there and talks, and I think communication's good. So I have no problem with the president going and doing this as long as he doesn't legitimize them to a degree with their nuclear weapons. I just can't believe North Korea would really consider giving up their nukes, knowing that's the only reason anyone pays any attention to them.
Well, that's a major reason why the West pays attention to them. That's why Japan pays attention to them. The bigger key to this, and this is something that was never quite brought into it before to the extent that it has, is its relationship and dependence on China. China is its door to the world. So anything that happens within North Korea has to take into some consideration what China wants. So now we're in a position of that Trump is leveraging U.S. relations with China to do something about North Korea. And now China has to make a calculation. Is North Korea worth the other things that we have at risk perhaps in this scenario?
What does China get from their relationship with North Korea? I know what North Korea gets. Sure. What does China get out of that?
Historically, you've got to think about China as not the country that it is now. You know, second largest economy in the world, the big person on the block in East Asia, you know, rival to the United States. You got to think about them 30 or 40 years ago when this relationship really was sort of setting the tone for what it is now. And that's when China was really trying to build itself up. Well, North Korea was a sort of wild card that they could play whenever they were dealing with either the Japanese or the Koreans or the United States even. And that's not to say that North Korea is simply a puppet of China. That's not the case either. But there is a lot of leverage there. They're very much intertwined together. And so what China gets out of it is not so much it's a strategic asset.
Okay.
It's another thing where it's not about them facing Japan or them facing the Koreans or them facing the United States in a one-on-one confrontation kind of thing. It's where they can say, well, watch this over here while we're trying to do something over here kind of thing.
Yeah. So as it stands right now, what's your sense of what China is going to think about this meeting going in, and what might they, because I guess North Korea, before they agree to anything with the U.S. or vice versa, might want to see what does China think. I mean,
well, that's what his trip to China a few weeks ago was about.
For the president, right.
He went for Kim Jong-un went to China in his first, I believe it was his first face-to-face meeting with the Chinese leadership, and that's where they told him, here's what we're willing to back you on, here's what you might have to give up, here's the parameters of where we'll get involved, and here's our read of what the Americans are going to ask of you, and that kind of thing.
Interesting. And Kim Jong-un's motivation to even be doing all of this, is he just desperate to some point maybe get these sanctions lifted? So, and what does he want to get out of this? Why is this in his interest?
He wants a guarantee that he will not be overthrown.
Okay.
He doesn't want to repeat, if you go back far enough, of a Iraq situation where we overthrew Saddam Hussein. He doesn't want a Gaddafi, Libya situation where we support some sort of intervention or some sort of scenario like that. So in some ways this really does look like what might have avoided like the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, where research has shown that one thing that might have really allowed that relationship with the United States and Cuba to really kind of normalize, if you will, and sort of maybe keep missiles out of there, was a guarantee from the United States that we wouldn't try to overthrow Castro.
Right.
And we kept doing that throughout the 60s. There was all sorts of, very sort of wild ideas that came out, poisoning his cigar, things like that, that came out during the 70s with all the church committee hearings that took place. And so if he gets that, a guarantee that nobody will try, because that's what he wants to just stay in power.
Right.
It's not about, I need nuclear weapons to do A, B, or C. It's simply that nuclear weapons give him the guarantee that somebody won't physically intervene in his thing. That's what he's learning from the Iraq situation, from the Libya situation, from even a Syria situation.
Yeah.
If you have nuclear weapons, it gives you leverage and probably even a veto on some sort of intervention.
Yep. And do you think if there's an agreement reached along those lines that you just said, it would also involve maybe lifting some of the sanctions on the country?
Oh, I think that would also be a big part of it. But it would be a measured thing.
Yeah.
In order for you to have the sanctions lifted, or certain types of sanctions lifted, and maybe even some sort of aid given to you, we're going to need some guarantees. It's like the thing from Reagan in the 80s when we were talking about lowering the nuclear arsenals in the 80s. Trust but verify.
Yeah.
And when it comes to our experience with those who are pursuing nuclear weapons, they do try to evade inspections. We've gotten that.
How do you confirm?
I mean, that's what happened with Iraq. That's what kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back that kind of convinced us we need to go in there in 2003. It's a big problem now with the chemical weapons situation in Syria. They are trying to control access so that maybe they can hide what they have left over from the strikes that took place last week.
Syria doesn't have nuclear weapons.
No, they do not. But they have pursued them. There was a Israeli air raid, I believe in 2012 or maybe earlier. I can't remember the exact year, where the Israelis bombed a complex there, a facility, and it's now been revealed that it was a nuclear facility. Israel never really owned up to it, but it was obvious it was them.
So that's why they targeted it. Back to North Korea, just what's fascinating to me is everything we see here in the Western world seems like it's through propaganda or whatever. And you see these marches, spectacular with the missiles and everyone out there and the soldiers. But I mean, you keep hearing from behind the scenes. I'm just wondering just how poverty-stricken the rest of that country is really behind the scenes, and how, I'm sure Kim Jong-un gets whatever he wants as the ultimate leader there, but his people are starving is what you keep hearing, except for these soldiers you sometimes see, marching the way they are. What do you think? How dire is it there in that country with all the sanctions?
Well, I think it's very dire, and it's always very fragile, Okay, if they do have a serious drought or a famine or something like that, it can even affect the military.
Okay.
But several years ago, the guiding ideology of the country was devoted towards a military first idea. So everything, they got first pick.
That's all the money. Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, they're the ones who guarantee the survival of the regime. So you have to keep their loyalty. It's a Praetorian Guard almost kind of situation that you see from Rome. And then, the only thing that allows the succession to go from Kim Il-sung and then to Kim Jong-il, then Kim Jong-un, is this guarantee from that sort of elite of military, political, party officials that are willing to work with that individual. So he has to keep their loyalty. Okay, so it's not just like he's a strong man who can step in and immediately just start throwing orders out. He's got to secure his base, consolidate his position, and he does that through favors, through relationships, through all sorts of
murder.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he did that. I mean, he had to get rid of family members. That we heard some wild stories coming out about that.
Just an awful despot. All right, well, yeah, that's the problem. When the fact that I guess in past presidents have not met with him because you just don't want to even acknowledge this scumbag, which is what he is. and you've got basically the president now, I think, realizing we have to have some dialogue because he's just become too dangerous, which I understand.
Sure, and I mean the thing is, what are you concerned about? Are you concerned about the worthiness of the person that you're having to negotiate with and saying, well, you know what, it doesn't matter what it is, I don't want to talk to that person? Or do you simply say, American lives are in danger, our allies are in danger, therefore we just got to hold our nose and do what's necessary?
Right. Well, communication, I think, is a good thing. And let's see, we'll talk more about that. We'll take a break. When we come back, if you're on hold, stay there. The number is 737-7587 if you want to join in the conversation. Talking, as you see, national, international politics right now on North Korea, but we'll go elsewhere as well before the end of the hour. We'll be right back after this.
This week